put it away for a while. We're going to start talking about the new topic. So for rest of the day today, what we're going to do is we're going to cover two different topics. One is just giving you just a high-level basic programming concept. We're not going to go in detail, but at least give you sufficient information so that when we start talking about the automation, you will be able to look at the script and understand what that script is trying to do. And then we're going to give you the basics of the database programming. Now, I know some of you are taking it, but we also offer a full, like it's 5-6 weeks course on the database. We're going to try to condense you, give you an overview in about 30 minutes of that database. As a tester, you need to understand the data structure so that part of data setup and data based backup testing, you need to have that knowledge. Like for example, you created a specific user. How do you know it has been created successfully in the system? Right? You can go into the database and check on those. So that's what rest of the day is going to do. So let's start first with the programming concept. Okay. So the goal for this one is to give you understand at a very high level what is the basic program structure look like. What are the different operators and structure, the variables, so on, and that, so that you can take a look at the program and say at high level, what is its offering? What is happening inside the program? Okay. So, irrespective of what programming language you're going to see it, right? You're going to see a structure similar to something that we have been talking about in a black box model, right? So we said that any software program is going to have an input, right? It's going to perform some function, right? And it's going to produce some output. Right? So when you go in, how do you know what function it's going to perform? Right? So this is the structure that we're going to look at any program that you're going to see. So most of the times you're going to see a structure which says that, hey, where is the program starting? Right? So the starting point, right? So when you come in here, right, what is the starting point? Okay. Then you're going to have some temporary memory or variable space, right? So as you are performing some calculation, right? Even when you're doing calculator, you have some temporary memory which says that, hey, I want to keep this in a memory, right? So you have an M plus, M minus button, right? And then you have a recall memory whenever you want to recall that particular thing in your multiplication or calculation. So you're going to have temporary memory, and then you're going to have instructions. What exactly is happening within that code. Right? And sometimes you will also have ending point. Right? So everything between the starting and ending point is essentially processing your input and producing the output. Okay. So let's take a look at an example. So here are two different languages. One is SQL language. T-SQL is nothing but a transact SQL. So when you try to do the database, you're going to use something, language similar to this one, SQL. And this one is a programming language, Java or C#. Okay. And here if you look at it, right, the starting point, in this case, it's telling you a begin. In this case, the starting point is your main program. Okay, so it's in this case the begin. Okay. Then all this one is doing, this one is telling the instructions, right? When you start the program, it says that, hey, I want you to print the hello world. Okay, in this case, it's same function, says, on the system output device, I want to print hello world. Now, there is also going to be name of this particular function that you're trying to access it. In this case, the name is this procedure hello world. In this case, the name is this class hello world and the method name. Okay. Both of them does nothing but just simply prints hello world and you want it. Just the language syntax. So this gets into a little bit more detail. Now this one addresses all three concepts that we talked about. My temporary memory, instructions, and the starting and endpoint. Right? So let's first take an example for this transaction SQL. Okay. My entry point is begin, and I'm going to use some temporary memory. Right? So I'm going to first define what those temporary memories are. Right? So I'm going to have a temporary storage area called age of the type integer. And then I have a character type with a length 1. So it's going to hold only one character in that temporary memory. And it's called middle initial. Okay. So within my instructions, I'm going to manipulate that temporary area. Okay. So in this case, I'm setting the age to be 21. I'm setting my middle initial to k. Now I want to print the information which is involving some of the temporary memory. Right? So in this case, I'm doing a print IM, and then I'm substituting the value from the age, right? This many years old. And my middle initial is this. Okay. And performing the same thing into Java or C#. So in our example, when I'm trying to do a loan calculation, right, I'll have to take the input that is coming in, right, I have to assign it somewhere and use that into calculation, right? So that input data that I put in, whatever the amount of my principal, becomes a temporary storage area. And then, okay.
So it's a semicolon after.
It just tells it that it's end of this instruction. Right? It's a syntactical, right? So in some languages, you will have semicolon as the end of instruction. In some language, it's simply a new page. I'm sorry, new line will be the instruction. So there will be one instruction per line. It all depends on the language. Yeah. So it's depending on the language those things are. In this case, right, this is the scoping. Right, so this main becomes a scope within this instruction, right, then that instruction. Now, there are a lot of things that are a lot more advanced, right, but what we are focusing on is to have a basic understanding so that when you look at the automation script as a tester, you should be able to say, hey, exactly what is it trying to do, whether it makes sense for them. The next thing you need to know is essentially different types of operators. Right? So when I'm performing it some sort of calculation, right, for specific conditions, then I need the operators, right? So when I'm looking at the credit application, and I'm a lender, and then I'm performing some action on it, right? Then I need to test a condition that, hey, is this application assigned to me? And is this application in pending state? Then I can perform some combination. So how would I go and specify those operators? So in this case, if I'm doing a SQL, well, I can use the operator in. In the programming language, if you're using C# or Java, you will use this symbol. So this becomes part of your instructions as you do. The same thing with the OR, right? And then not conditional. So those are the kind of operator, right? So when you look at it, you should be able to say, oh, this is trying to, like, it's going to group two conditions together, and then if it's both are true, then only it's done. Versus if it's an OR operator, and you're looking for either one of the conditions is true. Same thing goes with the comparison operator, right? You have a mathematical operator. This is the symbol used in a SQL. This is in Java and a Visual Basic, right? So equality symbol in a C# language is 2 equals. In a SQL, it's only 1, right? In C# and Java, if you just do only 1 equal, it's an assignment operator and not equality, right? So that's why this kind of table helps you to understand, hey, when I'm looking at the script, that is an automation script, and when something is assigned, is it checking for equality condition or it's performing an assignment?
So the script that you're going to be looking at is a Visual Basic script for the automation in the UFT.
Right, so you're going to have an equality, so you're going to have only one segment.
Yeah.
So you want to check for condition not equal, then you need to make sure that is an exclamation mark in front of the equality. Then you're going to do a conditional statement. Right, and there are different types of conditional statements. There are, most prominent are 3, right? By default, the instruction that you saw here, right? All of them are sequential. There is no condition, right? The only condition is as soon as I'm done with this, execute the next one. Versus, you're going to have some conditions, like what we wrote the example way earlier, right? Based on the values, if or else, right? Those are decisional conditional statement, right? It's based on certain value, I'm making a decision to go in one route or the other route. So not all the statement will be executed, it will be one of those statement will be executed. And the next type of conditional statements are iteratives, right? Where I want to perform certain tasks n number of times, or till a particular condition is satisfied. Right? So if I want to, like it's print first 10 records of my loan applications, right? And I want to display only 10 at a time to the screen, then I will do an iterative control, right? It says for 1 to 10, display on page 1. Then when click, somebody says next, go from 11 to 20 and display, right? So that's an iterative. In some cases, you can say, hey, I don't know how many numbers, but do it as long as this condition is true, right? So you become a conditional iterative statement. So let's take a look at this, right? Fairly simple, if else. We looked at that case when we try to assign the interest rate value based on the condition of the credit score. And in this case, if my department is 5, then print this thing, else print this thing, right? Only one of them is going to do it. So the important part is, when you look at this kind of conditional statement, you need to make sure you have data sufficient to test both of the core coverage. Right? You need to have one test case to cover this condition, you need to have one test case to cover this condition. If there are like 5, then you need to make sure that each one of those are covered. Now that's, we talked about, right? 4 is definitive number of time versus while do loops are based on a condition, right? So this is an example of for loop, okay? Where I'm going from 1 to 10, every time I'm going to increment by 1, and I'm going to print this. Okay. Versus while, I'm going to say, hey, while this particular value is less than 10, do this, right? In this scenario, I'm changing the condition within that. Right. So, if I change this I equal to I plus 2, it will execute only 5 times. Look at that here, I'm defining it, the increment right as part of the condition loop. Versus in this one, I'm not defining it. It is within the statement, right? And sometimes it could be an external factor influencing and making that change. You can just say, hey, if I'm a lender and I need to keep doing the work while there is at least one application pending into my review status. Right, you can just keep going in the equation and say, hey, I'm gonna present you next. As soon as you make a decision, if there is a pending, I'm gonna get to present you next. Right, it allows you to manage your workload as a particular business person. Right, you don't have to go back and say, show me the next free one, show me the next free one, right? You can program it and you put a loop that allows it, hey, as soon as there is one, it will automatically display to you. Same thing when you're like, it's getting a message, right? It'll keep giving you alert as long as there is a message, new message to be read. That's all we had in terms of basic programming. When you look at the Visual Basic script, when you do the automation, that thing will put in the context that allows you to read through it and understand it, what exactly is happening.